Josh,
Acknowledged.
good to see you. Um,
Likewise.
Thanks for making a bit of time. Appreciate that. I wanted to ask you about something that you said to me when we were talking last. You said that your goal was to provide intelligent, personalized care. Just tell me about that word intelligent. I mean, what do you mean by that? And what's different from regular personalized care, if you see?
Yeah. I think I'll be honest, intelligence kind of a default answer right now. I am struggling to find a better pithy phrase to put there. I think ultimately when we talk about intelligent, we're talking about, and when we talk about intelligent, we're talking about personalized care. We're talking about caring about the outcomes for the end user as it relates to what the end user wants, as opposed to what is, average or uh, what is good enough, I think,
Yeah.
increasingly in the medical care space, and in particular with physical therapy. The I think the challenge we're seeing there is that with reimbursement staying, flat or dipping in many cases for physical medicine procedures, that the level of quality inherently has to go down, not because physical therapists don't care or aren't qualified, but because they're trying, the only lever that they've got to pull on is to move more patients through in the same period of time.
Yeah.
And that just it limits not just what you can do, but it limits how you can think about that person, their goals and hopes and dreams, and make sure that you're helping them get their body to a place where those goals are achievable. So I think that's really, when we're talking about intelligence, personalized care, that's really where, at the heart of what we're trying to go for.
And give us a sense of the context that you're working in, because I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, governments, payers, whoever the other insurance companies, they always want to drive the price down, don't they? Because that's in their interest to do that. But I mean, tell us about the particular setting that you're focusing on, and where you're planning to make changes or trying to help make changes to benefit people.
We're looking at having our technology integrate into either into outpatient excuse me, outpatient surgery or the physical therapy clinic. But really, in particular, where we truly want integration is with the home use of the device. The goal with regards to that intelligent personalized care application is to leverage a user's everyday activity as a way and turn that everyday activity into needed muscle strengthening and retraining repetitions outside of that physical therapy clinic or gym. Uh, I think the way we've tried to position it with physical therapists has been to look at this as a way to automate some of the more mindless parts of their profession, and that they can they don't need to hang around to watch someone do leg lifts or otherwise go through strength, generally
Right.
to watch them go through strengthening activities. That is to some extent work that can be done automatically with the user wearing our devices, such that the physical therapist has more opportunity for direct manual therapy,
Yeah.
one-on-one care. For the orthopedic surgeon and for the surgical center, there's increasing attention on pre and post care, as that does one, it can factor into their MIPS scores, which can impact their publicly visible
Yeah.
ratings, and to some extent their reimbursement. But also um, that many of these facilities are going into bundled payment or capitated care models, where there's increased focus on trying to figure out where to reduce cost wherever possible.
So tell
So,
us,
yeah.
your point is well made about trying to automate some of this, but it's easier to say that than do it. I mean, tell us how your technology will help do some of those things.
So we're taking technology that's actually started off in development in the automotive industry,
Right.
with use of real-time operating systems to model forces on the joint, which it started off, which the OS started off life effectively modeling forces on an automatic transmission system,
Right.
and distilling those forces down into calculated force vectors on a model of the user's joint as they move, and then stimulating muscle in anticipation of replication of those particular sets of force vectors. That the setting of stimulation time and location is to right now entirely driven by the clinician. They select particular movements or particular phases of gait where stimulation would be most beneficial. Whether walking on level ground, going up and down stairs,
Right.
sitting up from a chair, finding movements where people are having are experiencing pain or dysfunction as they go through movement, and then uh, working in concert with musculature to assist with that movement, again, to accelerate that
Yeah.
re-strengthening and to do
Yeah.
so in a way that minimally isn't going to increase harm on the patient.
And does it, I mean, is it a wearable? Is it, just explain how the tech works in a practical sense so that people can get a sense
Yeah.
of what it is.
It is a wearable device. It will look like a brace, but doesn't provide any physical bracing. It will keep electrodes over muscle bellies of at least for this
Right.
first application, just focusing on the knee. Keep electrodes over the bellies of the quadriceps muscles.
Right.
So they're then put the device on in the morning, put pants or skirt on or whatever over that. It's gonna be able to fit on, very light, very low profile, able to
Right.
fit under most pieces of clothing. And then, basically as you're moving normally throughout everyday activity, it's going to be stimulating that muscle as you're using it. So basically once you put it on, turn it on, you don't have to think about it again.
And is that, sorry, let me just to clarify, so is that to help you walk in an everyday way, for example, or is it that if you like is partly kind of healing the knee? I mean, or is it a bit of both? I mean, is it a device that you just put on to help you walk, or is it something that helps you heal, or is it both?
It probably closer to helping you heal with this current version.
Right,
So we're only going to be working on folks with neurologically intact muscle with the first
right,
version of the device. It is that is absolutely a place we would love to be able to go in the future, assisting folks recovering from strokes, dealing with cerebral palsy or multiple sclerosis. But in the meantime, it's really focusing on that healing
yeah,
component. In general, the better the shape of the musculature around the knee, the better the shape of the knee. Making sure that quadriceps is able to do things like, contribute to shock absorption, weight distribution, in addition to knee extension, helps not, you're not necessarily going to, eliminate forces on the joint, but you can help spread out
yeah,
that force such that
yeah.
it's not exacerbating pain, for someone who's dealing with something like later stage osteoarthritis.
Yeah. I mean, presumably it's also got a huge market, hasn't it? I mean, there are lots and lots of pieces. I mean, just talking about knees, I mean, lots of people, I mean, I know quite a few that have got knee problems. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's, it's a pretty big market.
Absolutely. 15 million in the US symptomatic and seeking treatment for knee osteoarthritis or recovering from any kind of knee surgery.
Yeah.
That increases to something more like 55 million when you start adding in other geographies like
Wow.
United K, or UK, EU,
I mean, that's an
Australia, Japan.
extraordinary number, isn't it?
Yeah, well, osteoarthritis it's one of those things that, one tends to follow aging, and
Yeah.
the globally we are on average getting older. Uh, it follows to some extent weight. The heavier you are, the more load you're putting on the joint, the faster you may wear down that cartilage, and also oddly, kind of uh, uh, seemingly in opposition of those 2 points, it can also follow activity. Those who've put a lot of force through their joints, such as we see this with armed forces, veterans. are, develop knee osteoarthritis on average about 10 years before their, age-matched civilian counterparts. So there are lots of ways to get there. And right now the terminal handling for osteoarthritis remains joint replacement.
Hmm.
And it's a
I was
yeah.
about to ask, in what ways your proposition different to what's already out there? Is it that it will just replace knee replacement, or is it doing something else? I mean, just tell us about that.
The the holy grail for us, I think, will be being able to delay knee replacement. I don't think we're going to be able to replace it. With nothing that we're doing with this device is going to undo damage to cartilage or bone, if
Right.
it's already happened. Um, what we see is in difference is really um, fundamentally inconvenience in use of the device. We can point to efficacy. We see in research that stimulation combined with muscle usage leads to far better strength gains than stimulation
Right.
applied passively. We can point to the data collection capability that's there, being able to show improvements in movement or at least patient adherence. But ultimately, I think the thing that we have with this device that is an advantage over much of what's on the market is that point we made earlier about, put the device on, turn it on, go throughout your day. This is going to assist with strengthening without requiring someone to set aside time, mental focus, energy, etc., for their rehabilitation. And that's a challenge for a lot of people that
Yeah.
uh, they're working, they've got family commitments, maybe physical therapy is far away from them. There are loads of reasons that people don't engage in that kind of self-care beyond, laziness or lack of want to. And we
Yeah.
see this fitting well with that population.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. All the people that I'm just thinking about, all the people that I know that have got those sorts of injuries, they're all sports people, actually, and or ex-vets,
Hmm.
ex-military. I mean, obviously, military people tend to play a lot more sport anyway. I mean, it's a big thing in the military, isn't it? But you often see those things combined. I mean, did you start down this road because of the sort of problems for veterans, or did you come at it I mean, what got you onto this path, if you like?
Yeah, well, the military work we've engaged in, and in general, our the work with Articulate Labs, we quite literally got into by accident.
Right.
My co-founder lost his right leg below the knee in a motorcycle accident, and then he wore out the cartilage in the knee of his fully intact leg while he was relearning to walk. He
Okay.
was one of those people in that population I just talked about with regards to him not having time for PT, partially because of his commitments, partially because the physical therapy clinic he was told to go to was a half-hour drive each way.
Yeah.
Uh, so that takes a 4-hour commitment up to eight per week, and that just wasn't viable for him. In addition, he was some of those times that he was at physical therapy, sitting, existing neuromuscular electrical stimulation devices and moving his leg in time with the stimulation pulses. He's thinking, why did I drive a half hour just to do, to
Yeah.
kick my legs around a little bit? Like when I'm basically going through these movements every day anyways. Why can't I use those movements rather than, basically wasting time on this bench. So that's what got him started on developing the technology for his himself. Um, I, as an observer, just had Googled knee osteoarthritis. Both of us were kind of under the impression that this was a condition that only impacted amputees, that this was a relatively niche condition, and then
Right.
discovered that, yeah, tens of millions have
Yeah.
this. And furthermore, with a little bit more digging, that uh, a heavy, we'll say a preponderance of that population has similar access issues.
And in
So
terms of how you've built the technology, I mean, have you had lots of feedback? I mean, you've talked about all the people that might potentially use it. It's a big market. Have you had lots of feedback from customers to help you develop it?
absolutely. That's it's a lesson that every startup kind of has to learn that you eventually someone's going to tell you your baby's not pretty, and and you have to get used to that feeling. You have to thicken your skin. But yeah, we've gotten feedback with regards to fit, ease of use, abilities to, how do we extract data? What data do we show? That's come from end users,
Right.
clinicians, potential buyers, all of them. We take all that, take as much of that feedback into account as possible,
Mm.
to make sure that we're doing our best job possible making these devices.
And tell me about the data play here. I mean, what will you do with all that data? Because it presumably once these um, devices are in widespread use, I mean, you're going to have loads of data, presumably. I mean, you've got plans for how you're going to use that and stuff.
That's a work, to be very honest, that's a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think the initial plan was just, making a database that physical therapists could leverage for remote therapeutic monitoring based reimbursement. What we've seen in the past year, though, talking with physical therapy clinics, including those that have been successful in securing RTM reimbursement, is that for them the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. That they're better. It's more efficient for them to stick with cash pay. So in that regard, we kind of have to look again at the data and try to figure out not what does the payer want to see with regards to we still want our database to be, we still want what we want to build up with data to be able to be used for RTM. But really, it's going to probably be more of the question of what do I, as the physical therapist, get out of paying for the subscription, and then presumably passing some of that cost down. What does the patient get for the amount of money that they're paying for access to this data, and trying to figure out how do we, rather than the RTM mode where you're really just trying to justify later clinical decisions. It's more like, how do we use this here and now
Mm.
for assessing progress?
Yeah. And where are you going with this? I mean, I can see how the technology could help people. I mean, I can see that, and I can see there's a big market there, and I can see what you're saying about the data that comes out of the process. I mean, wh- I mean, what's the direction of travel here? I mean, where are you going with this? What would success look like to you?
Success to us would look like on a technological basis, the ability to really grow out this platform technology into a body area network of connected devices coordinating with one
Wow.
another to be able to address a lot of those complex rehab issues, like stroke or MS, including integration into exoskeletons, and basically using re-engaged muscle as a way to reduce motor and actuator load on an exoskeleton in order to cut bulk cost, battery draw, etc. Um, on a financial basis, certainly we want to get to a license or an acquisition. The ideal would be to do so with a company either in the orthopedics or in the digital health space that shares that vision of being able to grow out this technology, and to make more than just knee devices, to have multiple product lines, and to be able to really change how not just how physical medicine is administered, but I think ideally change how people think about strength and function for themselves.
Mm. And when you say change the way they think, I mean, just explain that to me in a bit more detail. I mean, for me, an injury is an injury, or in what way do you want to change the way people think? I mean, what's going on there?
I think, to be a little, mildly crude here, I think when we talk about muscle function, about strength, uh, people often distill it down to a means to an end of money, power, or sex. And they don't necessarily think more about what they do with their bodies outside of the
Mhm.
pursuit of any of those three things. that our ability to move, influences how we think about this world, how we interact with the world, what experiences we have. And I'd love to be able to bring in my co-founder here, who again, as an amputee, has lost the ability to walk for a while,
Yeah.
and can tell you what what that changes, not just in what you're able to access, but kind of how you think about your place in the world. So we want individuals, physicians, payers,
Mm.
to think about, when we're talking about, muscle strength, it's
Yeah.
the ability to pick up your grandkid. It's the ability to easily get on and off a plane so you can travel to new places. Uh, it's so much more than just kind of immediate gratification
So,
that
so it's
you
really
can
a kind
achieve.
of a quite an important quality of life issue, is what you're saying. Is that fair?
Yeah, yes, that's entirely fair.
And in terms of how you're going to get there, I mean, I love to see people that have, I mean, I'm always pleased to see people that have a big ambition. But it's one thing to say, I want to do this, isn't it? I mean, you've got quite a lot of things to overcome along the
Oh
way,
yeah.
haven't you, really? I mean, you've bitten off a great big challenge there, and I think it'd be great if you could achieve it. I mean, what would you say are the big obstacles that you're going to have to overcome to get to that success as you've just outlined it? I mean,
On the macro, first is always, for us, regulatory clearance,
yeah.
making sure we feel confident about that. It's just been a matter of pulling in the resources necessary to finish the steps between
And let me
here and
ask you
gone.
about how different. I mean,
Yeah.
lots of people say to me that getting the regulatory stuff over the line is one of the most difficult things, sometimes even more difficult than building the tech. I mean, what's your experience been?
It's changed over time. I will say, when we first started, regulatory was a huge source of fear, both for us
Yeah,
and for potential investors.
yeah, yeah,
And there's, still investors that flat out say, we're not messing with regulated technologies, period, or we're not messing with anything until it
yeah.
has marketing clearance. So yeah, that fear was there before. I think that fear is reduced over time, as we've been able to kind of show what other types of technologies are passing through that are similar to ours, and as we've seen the FDA relax some of the standards, some of the or reduce some of the hurdles for devices that are, at least wellness adjacent. So our device is going to benefit from that. Um, so no, I'll also add, through an award that we earned, we had opportunity to meet regularly with FDA representatives and
Right.
kind of talk with them about our biggest concerns, which are, really around software, and how the FDA is looking at embedded firmware in the like in the age of AI.
Mm.
And a lot of that really helped set our concerns at ease, that we need to, the biggest piece of advice there was focus on why more than how. Why did you make the design changes that you made? It's not necessarily you need to explain why you use this particular resistor in this particular space for this particular outcome. It's more 30,000 foot view than that. So that's so far that's really helped set us at ease, and all interactions we've had to date with the FDA have been actually pretty positive.
Mm. And other challenges that you face apart from the regulation one?
Uh, you know, this market, it's a difficult one to enter into. And it's always a difficult one to into, but you kind of the macroeconomic climate with, people losing health insurance,
Yeah.
where, inflation's tightening, tightening what people have in discretionary spending for things like their own health, particularly for parts of health that are going to be regarded as, fairly regarded as lower priority than making sure your heart still functions, making sure your lungs still function, making sure you've got, kind of your vital medications in place. Uh, that's that's something that we're trying to navigate, and have to. think not, anymore, not just about kind of the efficacy element with our clinical trials, but then health economics. What arguments can we make for return on investment for the provider and or for the patient, in addition to, and will help you achieve particular clinical goals. Um, and then I'd say kind of on the personal side in this role, it's always a work in progress to kind of understand how to manage better, how to think bigger and further, and how to prioritize, how to balance between doing the things that I need to do, that I see that the company needs, while also making sure I am keeping, the people that we've, the consultants, firms, interns, whoever we've got engaged, I'm making sure that they get what they need in order to keep moving.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say you want your legacy to be? I mean, I know this is kind of thinking a few years down the track now, but yeah, I'm just interested in the kind of the end game, if you like. I mean, what's the legacy you want to leave behind, if you get my drift?
I love that question. I mean, the silly kind of cliche answer is certainly, wanting to leave the world a better place than I
Yeah,
than I found it.
yeah,
And in doing so, restore, quality of life, mobility, freedom for people. Um, you know, I I I would like, as someone who came into this space without background in engineering, business, medicine,
right,
etc. Um, I would like to be someone that went about, just asking questions the right way. By
mm,
learning the craft of others who've come before us,
yeah,
understanding how we got to where we are, both, financially, technologically, and on a
mm,
medical basis. Um, meeting experts, and showing respect for the work that they've done, by understanding, by having good questions formed in advance based on, the ability to separate what we know from what we don't, and then, being able to create something as a result that advances technology, advances medicine, while again honoring, paying respect to the work that's been done in the past, as opposed to,
yeah, yeah.
treating lessons learned as mistakes that never should have happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get your point about that. It's an odd career choice, if you see what I mean. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. At what point did you decide that this is something that you're going to devote such a huge amount of time and energy to? I mean, I get your point about your business partner. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had uh, friends that have been injured and stuff, but I didn't decide to give up my existing career to go and, I mean, I'm thinking about a friend of mine who's had a knee operation,
Mhm.
that I know. I didn't give up my career to help him with his knee. I mean, it's an impressive thing that you do. I mean, what personally is it that motivates you for this?
It helped that, one, this development started at a point where I needed to pivot anyways,
Right,
where, I was in a space where I didn't really see any room to grow, uh, or advance.
right.
So, I wanted to do something different. From that previous role, I had learned that I enjoyed kind of building systems from the ground up and figuring things out on my own, kind of just jumping in the deep end. So this was an opportunity to do that in all kinds of ways that I never
Yeah.
I've never imagined.
It's an interesting experience being a CEO of a company like that, isn't it?
I never expected to be. That it was something I actively put off for as long as I could, because I recognized, again, that lack of experience.
Mm.
I didn't see what right I had to occupy that role. I didn't see how I could be anything but a net negative to the organization. It really it wasn't until kind of going through our first health tech accelerator where I had the the director of that program, I was introducing myself as interim CEO and have the director just say, "We're all interim something. You know,
Mm.
you're CEO right now." And that was kind of the first time I'd gotten any kind of validation in that role outside of my co-founder, which I kind of learned to view as a, for better or worse, kind of view as a biased source. Um, and it also kind of helped solidify in my mind the need to, look at this role not from the viewpoint of how do I look or what education did I have or anything like that, but more about what are the responsibilities of this role and uh, how do I execute those? How do I handle those
And how do
faithfully
you
to the
feel about
best
it now?
way?
You've been doing it for a little while. I mean, how do you feel? Do you feel that you've kind of grown into it, or is it still a bit of an uphill struggle? I mean, how do you feel about what you're doing?
It's still, I wouldn't call it an uphill struggle as much as you reach plateaus,
Mm.
and that's good for a period of time, and then you have to figure out who do you need to be next. Um, where right now I need to something I've been resisting is spending either being a full-time fundraiser or being a full-time salesperson.
Right.
Uh, and uh, that is uh, it's a different personality than someone who is kind of doing everything to begin with, or just is focusing on regulatory and clinical. So that's kind of the plateau I'm working to advance myself out of right now.
Mm. And how do you? I mean, what is it that gives you the energy? Because it's a tough gig building a business. I mean, I talk to lots of CEOs, and they all basically say a variation on the same thing, which is that it's a roller coaster. You know, there are great days and there are bad days, and there's a lot in the middle. That requires huge amounts of energy. I mean, where do you get your energy from for something like this? I mean,
Ah, I'm figuring that out, to be honest.
right,
It started from a place of um, insecurity and wanting to do my best because of fear of how I was going to be perceived otherwise. And now a lot of those fears and insecurities have gone away, and I'm genuinely, having to figure out kind of what's going to be that new way forward. What's that new energy source as opposed to, what's something that helps me pull myself forward as opposed to being something that put, enables me to run away
mm,
from things, if that makes any sense. So that's something I've been working on with like personal coaches and whatnot, just understanding what those motivations are and how I can tap into them. Otherwise, I think it's maintaining contact with our clinical trial partners, our interns and consultants, the people who've been using our devices, who are kind of uh, who are they're enthusiastic about what we're doing here. That I draw upon. I see these people who are investing their time, energy, money into us, and I want to do right by them, and I want to do right by the people who are using our devices. So that's definitely what helps me right now.
mm. And in terms of, as it were, building a team. I mean, again, it's tough for CEOs, but it's also tough for the people around them, I think. I mean, I mean, how do you, well, first of all, I mean, how have you approached building the right team to move your business forward? I mean, have you had a particular view on how to do that, and has it worked? And how do you feel about the bit that I'm interested in is getting other people on board to help you move it forward? I mean, what's your take on that and how that works and what have you learned from it and so on?
I think the biggest challenge for me, with team building, what I've had to learn is to, make sure that we understand what the goal is going to be,
Yeah.
and to understand how whoever you're hiring, on whatever basis, how are they going to go about doing that, and how are you going to evaluate
Yeah.
success
Yeah.
as it relates to that goal achievement, as opposed to where I started, which was, well, you've got more experience than me in this. How could I say no? We had a lot, we lit a lot of money on fire. We lit a lot of equity on fire that way, by just um, taking our hands off the wheel and assuming that other people would know better. It doesn't mean that we're the smartest people in the rooms or more experienced people in the room, but we are the ones that are going to care more than anybody else
Yeah.
how things are going to go. And we have to we have to maintain responsibility in that regard as we're bringing people in. So that's led to us doing a better job. I think aiming higher, bringing in people with higher caliber, but then also having some level of structure in place for what we expect from them and what they expect from us, and what are the intervals by which we're going to deliver that to each other.
And has it stretched you building a business? I mean, have you had those moments when you think, God, I don't know whether I can do this? I mean, is it? I mean, most CEOs I know would say they get pushed every day, but I mean, how do you feel about that kind of the kind of overwhelm that comes with building a business and the
Yeah.
sometimes I mean feeling out of your depth. I mean, I've had that where I think I just don't know how to do this bit. I mean, have you had moments like that, and how have you handled them?
You have moments like that all the time. That doesn't
Yeah.
stop. Right down to kind of the enormity of what we're trying to accomplish, and how are we going to get there. And what do I not know right now about that path forward that I've got to figure out. Um, Working through overwhelm has meant, you know, doing a better job with prioritization, with focus, getting more comfortable with saying no. Um, because that's the first thing, is just having eyes bigger than your stomach, and saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way that may not be relevant, or you may not realize until you kind of stop and think about it, like, yeah, this outcome isn't worth the energy I'm going to put into it. And just trying to do a better job breaking things down into a quarter by quarter, month by month, week by week, day by day basis, such that
Mm.
uh, I try to have a plan out in front of me before I start the day. So I'm not starting with a blank piece of paper
Mm.
thinking, oh no, I've got to fill this up. How am I going to do it? But it's basically planning in such a way that I can put blinders on myself like a horse,
Mm.
and only charge it at one or two things at a time.
So you're basically saying trying to avoid being distracted by all the other stuff that's going on. That's what you seem to be saying.
As best I can.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it won't happen. In fact, right before this call, we got our first request for an annual report with the state of Illinois. So I'm reading through the directions, trying to understand how to do that, and not preparing for this interview. So just in that moment, I had already jumped off the tracks. But no, it's getting better in terms of kind of maintaining that focus.
Yeah. I mean, just to pick up what you're saying, I mean, focus seems to be a really important thing, because there's 101 things you could do, but staying focused is absolutely critical so that you get the stuff done that you need to get done. But that's also quite a difficult. I mean, how do you work out what to do? I mean, I'm always interested in this question of, because you could do so many things.
Yeah.
How do you work out what to prioritize? Do you have an approach to that?
To be honest, the thing that's worked the best is whatever I want to do the least is usually the thing I need to do the most.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm like that.
what it, yeah,
Yeah, I
whatever,
get that.
and also, for this particular role, whatever the thing is that nobody else in the organization wants to do, that's probably the thing I need to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so a mentor, referred to it as eating glass.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I've heard that one. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So now that's part of the planning process is, have you eaten your glass today? Where's the glass? Go see, seek it out and handle at least one thing on that list before you go and do something, and do something that you might like or something that's easier, whatever. But, just whatever that thing is that is in the corner that you've been ignoring, um,
And
that almost always wins it in
has
it.
that
Yeah.
changed you, would you say, as a person? And that having to do that all the time?
Absolutely.
In what way?
I started off as well. First of all, I never had any intent to be an entrepreneur, to start a company, be my own boss, etc. Uh, I've been up until that point, I've been an employee. You give me a list of things to do. I say yes, sir, and I go knock all those things off of the list. And that. That mindset had to be
Yeah.
unwound going into this because there's no person above you to give you that list, and there's no one to pat you on your head when you get the stuff done. The work has to be its own reward.
And do you enjoy
It,
that? Does that fit with your personality, would you say?
it does. It does now. At the very beginning, it didn't. But I think one thing that changed with at least achieving a little bit of success. Seeing, going from winning, $1,000 in a competition to pulling in, 10 to 25K in investment to now, pulling in six figures through accelerators and now having, pulled in seven figures through an award. Like your scope changes.
Yeah.
What becomes possible changes. Your how you think. Being able to think, bigger or deeper or further ahead changes. And so as my I'd like to think that my mindset has adapted in kind, and that I am doing all those things, and that I can look at this thing that has a chance of bringing in again seven figures is going to be more important than this one nagging thing that doesn't bring in any money, and it was just is a line to or something to cross off of a to-do list. That's kind of been the change.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a really important process to go through actually, because it forces you to think about what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and that has always struck me as quite a good thing.
Yeah. Particularly, I think in this day and age, we're approaching a world where stable employment is not going to be what it used to be,
Yeah,
and that we're all going to have to be thinking about our roles and how we earn money from an entrepreneurial mindset. It's not going to be, I got this degree, now I'm going to do one thing really well for the next 40 years. Like that
that world is
was,
gone, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Now it's, you know, how uh, how do I market myself or my good or my service? How do I look at trends? How do I understand where the world is going, and how do I adapt? How do I make sure that I'm finding ways to stay competitive? Um, especially, one of the consideration there is age is for better or worse it's a consideration. And time is moving on for me too. I'm still able to blend in with younger people, but I'm getting wrinkles, I'm getting gray hair. Eventually, that's going to stop. And when that happens, that's going to, you know, snap my fingers and put me on the job market tomorrow. That is going to change how a potential employer looks at me, or it's going to change how an investor looks at me whenever I come with the next deal. So that's something else that I have to account for. So yeah, it's um, I'd say one other thing that's kind of valuable here is it does help you, it helps you see what problems matter and what don't.
Yeah,
If you've been inside of a bureaucracy, and also, on a if you've been inside of a bureaucracy, um, and your focus is kind of narrowed to this one tiny sliver of existence, and you kind of build everything around that sliver. It becomes problems within that sliver become monumental.
Mm.
Whereas if you pull back and look at this, you say, who cares? Or
Yeah.
here's a simple solution. This gets you 80% of the way there, 20% of the time, and 20% of the time and effort. Like you get a better sense for what fights are worth fighting and what things are just handle it and move on.
Mm. Mm. I mean, that's such an interesting perspective, I think, because it's so easy to get sucked into little stuff and lose contact with the things that are really important, not just to the business, but to you personally as well. I mean, that's it's very easy to get distracted, I think, by other stuff. I mean, I know I have. And what would you say? What would you say are the big things that you've learned about building a business? Not specifically the tech that you're working on, but just generally about building a business. I mean, what's the big learning for you from what you've done?
I mean, first of all, nothing matters if you don't have customers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If and that's it was a big lesson learned with regards to market research. We conducted market research at the beginning, but that's centered on basically, should the technology exist? Do
Mm,
you like the idea of what we're doing? We asked surgeons and therapists and whatnot, and the answer by and large was yes. Like I like this product. I would use this with X% of Y number of patients in my practice. But we never asked them, what would you pay for it? What do you think? What would your customers pay
right.
for it? What if insurance didn't cover this, would you still feel the same way? And that kicked us in the teeth, that we having to go back and kind of figure out not just, what the efficacy questions that we need to answer, but then what are the health economic ones? And how do we make everybody happy, or get everyone as close to happy as possible in that value chain on a financial basis? If you're not asking those questions, and either doing it dispassionately or getting a third party to do it for you, you're not getting a full picture of whether your technology and whether your company
Mm,
even need to exist.
yeah. And if you don't understand the willingness to pay, nothing else falls into place, does it? So you've really got to get a handle on that. As you just said, it's customers. It's not
Yeah.
just customers, but customers that are willing to pay.
Yeah, and it's a different conversation that I think a lot of accelerators and incubators and the like don't necessarily prepare
Mm,
companies for. Accelerators and incubators, in many cases, trade on um, hope and potential, and like the size of the market, and the thought that out of this cohort of 10, one or two will get at least close to that possibility. Same as how investors kind of look at this, but that um, it kind of creates a way of pitching, by the books, color the numbers type of pitching that tends to bypass the whole, uh, do your customers exist? Do your customers actually want this? And having that conversation again is very different than, you know, do you like this device? Do you hope that it works the way we hope it does? Um, that's a challenge. That's a very different, very much more difficult conversation to have.
mm. And were you able to have those conversations with customers? I mean, were they willing to share that information with you? I mean, did you get a good sense before you, or in the early days, that they would find the product helpful?
I feel like that's always a work in progress. And the short answer is yes. And in particular, I think we've been pleasantly surprised by, our customers in the short term are going to be durable medical equipment suppliers who have
Mm,
channel relationships with surgical centers and physical therapy clinics. And I've been pleasantly surprised how many of them have been open to talk about their, basically a pro forma for the device. What kind of margins do they expect? What kind of costs do they expect to incur in getting the device out to people? What are the costs of inventory, warehousing, dealing with warranties, et cetera? Who's responsible for what, such that, it's really getting into the nitty-gritty of how do we make this technology work for you,
Mm.
and having this as a part of your library, your formulary, whatever you want to call it, without uh, even if it's making money, if it's taking your sales reps more time to deal with than competitive devices, then you're going to wind up at the bottom of the
Yeah,
bag.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, the thing that was going through my mind as you were speaking is all those things that you just listed. I mean, they kind of illustrate how complex creating a business around a product like this is.
Very complex. And uh, you know, beyond kind of understanding that there are multiple chains between us as
Mm.
manufacturer and the patient, it's understanding the incentives of everyone along those lines, and the incentives don't always don't always line up
No,
between those parties. For the outpatient surgical center under that bundled care model, they want to maximize margin, and an easy way to do that is to reduce direct labor. And one place where they might do that is with physical therapy. That's a consideration that, when we're bringing this device into a space with both orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists,
mm,
uh, is one going to basically use this against the other?
yeah,
Uh, is this going to cut into their margins? And if so, how do we position this in such a way that we make it so that everybody wins? Or in some cases, it's just who can, of whatever number of parties we've got in this room, who can we afford to anger?
yeah,
Who can we make do without that, they might put up a fight in the process, but we can see more ways to winning without them than with them.
yeah. I mean, like I said, it illustrates the complexity of the job, actually. Let me ask you a couple of questions before we wind up. So, I mean, you've obviously been on a really interesting journey with this. I personally think it's a great proposition that you're working on. I mean, partly because I know lots of people that have had injuries like that, and that I can see why it would help them. But when you look back, is there anything, if you were starting over, is there anything you'd do differently, perhaps?
Oh boy, I feel like loads of things. And ultimately, every mistake every every mistake needed to be made, in order to get to this point. But uh, really, I think the biggest thing is that understanding of what actually matters. When I started, we had a great business plan, and we had squeaky clean QuickBooks set up, and great organization of all the folders for all the information. It's like, who cares? It was arranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Mm,
That I didn't, I had to get out from really where I was more comfortable was behind the desk.
mm,
Uh, and I had to get out of there and start talking with people, and kind of, go against my native impulses towards being a little bit more introverted,
yeah,
and also wanting to avoid conflict.
yeah.
And I had to steer away from that. Steer into conflict, steer into other people, and that's where the most progress tends to wind up being made. That would be the thing I would do differently.
It's a really good point, I think, about focusing on where you can have the most impact. I mean, somebody said to me, they felt that being a CEO was all about getting comfortable being uncomfortable, if you see what I mean. I thought that was a really good way of
Yeah.
looking at it, actually. One last question then. So, if you were to offer a piece of advice to somebody just starting out, what would it be?
Um, Distilling it down. The challenge is distilling it down to a single one, because a bunch of things come to mind. Um, Talk to your customers. Talk to your customers.
Right.
Talk to your customers. You know, and that's not, not just at, any one specific phase. It's um, even before you start developing, take the opportunity to go and find the people in your space. And it doesn't have to be actually the folks who are going to wind up buying the product, but at least, the people that are going to have input into its use, and talk with them and get their honest feedback about why your idea sucks, or why your idea may
Mm.
not work, or
Yeah,
what would cause them to put your idea in the storage room, because that's where, we've gotten to see that in hospitals. We have found the graveyard of great ideas
yeah,
in some, random storage closet,
yeah,
where
yeah,
a lot of technology was developed without ever talking with the people who'd be using it.
yeah,
And it just winds up out of sight, out of mind. Um, and that you've got to have this continual input, that, to your point about, being comfortable with discomfort. That's, I think that extends into engineering, business development,
yeah.
your market research, seeking out the worst possible outcomes for your technology, as opposed to the best,
Mm.
and making sure you're addressing those as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Josh, two great pieces of advice. I mean, you're saying, talk to your customers and focus focus on where you can have an impact. I mean, two really good pieces of advice there, I think, for anyone starting out. Josh, thank you for making a bit of time. I think it's a brilliant proposition. Because like I said earlier, I know people that are suffering with those sorts of injuries at the moment. So I think this sort of thing will really help. And I love to see people with a bit of ambition, and I think you're going to be busy for a while yet, trying to make it all happen. But there's nothing like a bit of ambition to change the world, I think. So thank you for making a bit of time to come and talk to us, and good luck going forward.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Josh. Bye bye.